I will begin in 3, 2, and 1. The intuition pump that we posit to you inside government is incredibly simple. We should target that which we already do well, and we should strategically pivot to things that we don't do that well. On opposition side, even if you are successful in establishing your factory or a manufacturing industry, at no point are you able to have a chance against the international markets. At no point will you create an economy of scale that rivals those particular countries. At no point will you actually rise out of the state of developing that you are currently in. Opposition seems to believe in a false characterization of how vulnerable the capacity of these developing countries actually operate under. Because yes, workers here are paid less. We do have a lot of them. But the cost of creating that system is literally going to curtail all of the money that DLO wants for the average person. Let me be clear, the less money you spend on the strengths you already have currently, that particularly leads to you losing that particular strength and allows avenues for other countries to actually subsume a lot of the current comparative advantage that you already have. Before I move on to the two clashes in this debate, a couple of responses to the previous speaker. One, they in their POI try to scroll the motion and say, we are going to build manufacturing for service industries. We think that we can co-opt that benefit when we have current joint ventures with the international corporations to actually build those particular things. We do not have to do it ourselves. That's the unique burden that opposition has to prove in their speech. Secondly, DLO underplays remittances and how they work. 80% of remittances come from the service industry because of a large amount of overseas workers who send dollars back home since they work abroad. We want to grow the service industry that actually creates a lot of these jobs to begin with, as opposed to opposition where they are outcome dependent on doing it well and succeeding. It's very important. You have so many successes that have to happen to unlock all of their benefits. On government, it's just a lower hanging fruit or a lower barrier to actually prove because we have already this particular economy of scale to compete. Therefore, it's probably within our interest as a developing country to push that competitive advantage more and not lose a lot of leverage, as to what Joseph says in his speech, of which we heard no rebuttal. Thirdly, DLO talks about equity and ownership being important, meaning we rather have our own stake in manufacturing. However, as what we consistently characterized, a lot of these nurses, waiters, and people in service cannot make that particular pivot or switch to the manufacturing industry. Even if they did did it in their home country, the home country loses out on their own particular advantage because they try and chase multiple things at once, but they don't catch any of it. Op just cannot have their cake and eat it too. Lastly, the agrarian industry that we built on Op becomes a huge sunken cost if you spend money there, and it just gets wrecked by all of the elements or all of the external factors that exist in regards to you propping up that industry to begin with. What's the first clash? I think this debate nuances its importance on the likelihood of success on where can these developing states be better off. What then did my partner say? I think Isaiah gave a very important characterization in the round. The biggest comparative advantage in states like the Philippines, the Latin American countries, certain parts of Africa and India are literally human capital. It's intuitively true that Pinoy nurses are a huge part of our economy for all of the remittances they give back. Even in NO's own examples, India has high human capital in the call centers that they themselves prop up. It's a lot of things that already do exist in status quo. 2, it's really not a parasitic relationship. It's actually quite symbiotic and beneficial for both countries to begin with. I think LO doesn't understand that these service industries have already been propped up and set up. This is a direct response to LO's first and second argument. 1, we aren't that poor. I understand I'm a member of a developing world, but we also have emerging markets, or we're not as wrecked as what LO claims us to be. Secondly, I don't think that she necessarily characterizes their particular case in the real world. Isaiah quite clearly explained the reason why comparative advantage already exists, and exists to a really big extent on our side. The reason why the US or Europe or developing states get Filipino nurses, they get Thai nurses, they get Indian tech support is precisely because we already have an advantage into this particular thing, and they are not likely to want to do these things because it's relatively low labor, or it's not that, you don't need a lot of skill in order to do it. Joseph explains on this particular point. So what happens then is the particular trade-off. Isaiah says you have just a lot more capacity in being able to understand and get the mutual benefits coming if you go to outward into all of these particular developed countries. That is to say, it's a shared benefit as a consequence of you being able to do this. The exclusivity I really want to emphasize is that you really don't have this capacity to a broader extent if you focus on another thing that is likely to actually not even occur to begin with, or even if it does, it loses a lot of capital for the particular country. I'll take the POI before the second clash. Go.
Just to clarify, because you're sending more people abroad for remittances, your model would look like, I don't know, more baby making factories, like you'll have more reproduction programs. It's unclear what burden you've taken to improve the service industry other than shipping people out, which you can just, I guess, make more children and then ship them out. There is no development in your world.
Yeah, so we enable more money to enter these particular service industries. Because there is now more money, there is more capital for these industries to be able to use it in order to bolster whatever it is that they do in these industries. I want to clarify that it's quite absurd that that DLO thinks that all of these service requirements need a high level of education. Just like vibe check that. Really quickly, I think the second clash then has to come into how this international community reacts as a consequence of whatever it is we do, right? We either support or we actually build all of these new particular industries. I want to note that I don't really think that DLHOS even responded to Joseph's extension at this particular point. So that means a lot of his standing benefits needs to be responded to at least by opposition whip. That is to say, on account, if you do try to do this and you do it quite well, that in and of itself provides the incentive for a lot of these developed states to literally go into your particular market and be able to subsume a lot of the potential benefits that you have. That being said, in status quo currently, we have a proliferation of our service industries. We do well there. We want to do even well there in the future. On their side of the house, if you commit to something new, you probably won't even get it to start. For all of those reasons, propose.
Thank you very much for that speech.